Hello, I'm Chris Osmond, and this is Solutions. Enough complaining, let's fix America. I want to continue in the same vein as I have for the past couple of videos by reading from excerpts from my book, Solutions, Enough Complaining, Let's Fix America. And today I want to read the introduction because it will lay out the three sections that the book is comprised of and kind of give you an idea of why I laid the book out in such a manner. So here we go. Introduction. Solutions is the culmination of articles and observations that I have written and or made over the past 10 to 15 years. The aforementioned articles and observations pertain mainly to American culture, economy, civility or lack thereof, equity, and equality, but did at times extend to the world when applicable. The catalyst for my observations came about when hearing tales of some theoretical world as described by current and former political, social, economic leaders, and more. The catalysts for the articles I have penned, while stemming from the same sources referenced in the previous sentence, were the seemingly apparent contradictions that exist between any given leader's words and what was observable in the real world. In 2018, claims like the economy is doing great sound quite empty when 50% of the American workforce makes $30,000 or less. Side note, that number has been reduced. There was a recent survey that came out where it claims that 44% of Americans only make $18,000 or less. So back to the book. America's first black president, receiving the Nobel Peace Prize before taking America from 2 wars, one illegal, immoral, and unjustified, to 7 wars, and the Nobel Committee not rescinding their award. Though I have historically felt a certain bias towards one end of the political, social, and economic spectrum, I believe that my current beliefs are relevant to the majority of Americans. And while absolute proof of the allegations I set forth in this book may be improbable or even impossible to provide, I submit that a simple comparison of the words coming out of one's current and favorite leader with the world in which one lives will reveal a stark divergence. Whether that most favored leader be local, regional, or national, skepticism of their promises, claims of assertions can only further a quest for the truth. Scrutinization of campaign promises, policies, and voting records will only lead to better leadership that is more representative than the current offering. One goal of this book is to open minds and eyes so people can see clearly without the fog of deceit we have had to endure for so long. For instance, when George W. Bush claimed his biggest hero to be Jesus Christ before starting the war in Iraq, far more Americans should have examined the evidence presented to justify war and questioned whether Jesus Christ would have attacked the sovereign nation, or the Dixie Chicks for their opposition to that war. Jesus may have been his hero, but he was not George W. Bush's role model. As proof of my claim, I dare anyone to find a passage in the New Testament where Jesus said to go to war even if justification is based on a lie. So, while reading Solutions, consider the following. Are the historical outcomes of either the words our past leaders have spoken or the actions they've taken been fruitful? Whether intentionally or not, have those words borne out what they implicitly or explicitly promised? Have the actions resulted in the stated outcomes? Have the declared wars we fought brought more security, physical, economic, or spiritual, to America? In a word, no. We still have mass shootings every few months. More people fall into homelessness and poverty daily in America. We can't even provide clean drinking water to large numbers of our society. In one regard, these wars more closely resemble theft than they resemble a means to a more secure America. Someone or some minority of someone's is getting rich from the tax dollars we pay to create weapons of mass destruction that are used to bomb foreign lands or sold to countries like Saudi Arabia. I personally have not been enriched by those fat defense contract dollars. Have you? I have, however, paid taxes into the $700 billion defense budget. As for our physical security, while I believe there is no way to definitively answer this question, I submit that any proponents of war would be hard-pressed to provide even a weak yes. given that our wars have done little to nothing to secure those nations we have attacked. Whether started based on the accusation of weapons of mass destruction, humanitarian reasons, threats from other nations, has America's adventurism helped the people of other nations? Forget nations as in plural. Other than Israel, have we helped the people of a single nation? All I see are the mounting numbers of refugees scattered around the world due to American intervention in Iraq, Libya, Syria, and Yemen. Adding to the argument against the effectiveness of America's intervention around the globe is the fact that we have done little to nothing to strengthen those countries that are geographically closest to our shores and borders. Have we made countries south of the United States stronger? Have we made them impervious to future problems? Have we fortified them against threat of socialist ideas like our own military, or our own system of primary and secondary education, or our own bank bailouts and corporate tax subsidies, national system of highways and state roads? Have we helped guide countries like Venezuela towards a system of capitalism that benefits the people of that nation? Have we helped Mexico adopt an economic system that eliminated the desire or need for a thriving drug trade? The short answer is no, because all we know that without genocide, you cannot stop a philosophy, edict, religion, or idea. Okay, maybe I was being slightly facetious in the previous paragraph, but ask yourself, has American intervention helped neighboring nations gain, maintain, or regain independence or sovereignty or security? Have we made our neighbors inherently stronger or independent of whatever handouts we offer them these days? As to the question of whether America helps or hurts other nations in which we intervene, perhaps there are more nuanced answers than a simple yes or no. But given America's history, I personally have concluded that rarely have we strengthened our other countries when we decided to help them. When trying to list the true beneficiaries of the wars in which America has taken part, it is difficult to conclude that this list would even include most Americans. Truth be told, if certain sources are to be believed, America has intervened in other countries as a means to fatten the wallets of private investors while indebting the people of those nations we attack and our own citizens to the very same investors. I provide a link. I will provide the link to a book that talks about how we intervene in other countries for the benefit of a very few Americans. The book is called Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and I'll provide the link to that book. Now, given the economic and cultural turmoil America has caused over the years, shouldn't we fear the possibility of other governments stepping up, whether openly or surreptitiously, to gain access to our southern border? Our elections, our government, are these ideas far-fetched? How thin is our army stretched around the world currently? How thinly stretched was the Roman Empire when it collapsed? Did the Roman Empire only face external threats from known enemies? No. The Roman Emperor's demise resulted as much from internal struggle as it did from external ones. For this reason, I ask all Americans the following. Given the current climate in which we find America with regard to our international relationships, do you feel honestly and properly represented by your government? Given the evidence and the fact that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and Bush knew this, does George W.'s decision to attack Iraq represent your values, beliefs, or desire? With 15 of the 19 hijackers on 9/11 known to be from Saudi Arabia, does it make sense that we attacked Afghanistan but not Saudi Arabia? Was Obama's choice to expand the 2 wars inherited from Bush into 7 wars truly in the best interest of this country or the countries we attacked? And if your answer to all of these questions was yes, then I would follow up with the following. Do these extra wars seem to have solved all of the problems in the Middle East? Does the killing of millions of people in some foreign land sound like the country you envisioned for you or your children or your children's children? With failing infrastructure in schools, should we be spending so much on one-time use bombs dropped on other countries to save those other countries? With good paying jobs replaced by jobs that increasingly only pay poverty wages, should we be training foreign soldiers around the world to defeat combatants we are responsible for creating in the first place? A link is provided to an article that discusses how we created Osama bin Laden and other terrorists. When Congress can add another $100 billion on top of the over $500 billion we already spend to our military spending without Republican or Democratic leadership asking where this extra money will come from, should we be questioning where the 60 to 80 billion it would cost to send people to public college would come from? Should we ask how we are going to pay for a better healthcare system that would cost the American people, at a minimum, $2 trillion less than the current healthcare system? The answer to all of these is yes. But the conversation should be an honest discussion with fact and figures provided by experts on both sides of the discussion, not by politicians. It should be economists that provide the information as far as how we should best spend the money that is collected in our tax dollars. We should question the cost of sending anyone to college for free, just as we should question the cost of killing people in other countries. We should question everything our leaders tell us, not only because some of them lie, but because some have opinions informed by others with agendas that are counterintuitive to the sustainable and healthy America and world. Does increasing inequality, homelessness, poverty, ignorance, war sound like the America that best represents your beliefs? Do you feel that you are living in a fair, just, or even humane society? If not, keep reading. If you have decided to read on, you will find that this book is divided into three main sections. The first section is assumptions. And as its name suggests, it details assumptions that I have made pertaining to the various issues addressed within. These assumptions are all very subjective and understandably open to suspicion, scrutiny, and debate. My intention is not to imply that I am the authority on any of the topics covered. This section is instead meant to serve as a means to breach a subject and provide a baseline from which to begin an exploration of each topic. In the next section, requirements, I list the things I deem necessary to effect change. Be they a mindset, system of beliefs, or physical and tangible changes, I discuss what I feel necessary to avoid the pitfalls and traps into which people have fallen when seeking substantive change. In this section, I offer justification and rationale for greater thresholds of entry for new members to any cause, group, or organization seeking change. I do so because throughout history there have always been voices of dissent. It was, after all, dissenting voices that led to the creation of this nation. The problem today, as it was in the past, is that far too often voices of true dissent, whether intentionally or not, have been silenced, obscured, or distorted through means of deception or by being co-opted by the opposition. As examples, I present Occupy Wall Street, which sought to address and expose excessive greed that is harmful to the economy. While the police pepper sprayed the protesters, the news demonized the protesters as lazy hippies. Do peaceful protesters deserve to be pepper sprayed for fighting for a more equitable America? As a second example, I submit the protest against the North Dakota Access Pipeline, known as No DAPL. Remember when it was discovered that the company laying the pipeline hired a man to pretend to be a protester, and this guy fired on the police? Side note, link provided below. For this reason, I provide requirements that could serve as guidelines or ground rules upon which arguments in the book will be based, provided these ground rules should in no way be perceived as set in stone. Consider instead that they should serve as a baseline that could be adapted to suit the changing times or upon which new ideas can be considered for thoughtful and in-depth debate. In the third and last section, called Solutions, I provide my ideas and proposals as well as the ideas and proposals of others to resolve the biggest issues we face as a nation today. These ideas and proposals shall also only serve as guidelines upon which to begin the conversation necessary to move us all towards a more fair, equitable, and sustainable future. America is falling apart from within and without, and it feels as if most of us are watching its demise complicitly. Complicit may sound like a harsh criticism until you consider the fact that so many of our elected officials have been in office for decades, their own fortunes improving dramatically while ours flounder and dissipate. Side note, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck and Mitch McConnell have been in office since the mid to mid late 80s. And to me, the world was better before it was better before they were in office. And both of those people have enriched themselves to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. I think Mitch McConnell was worth $88 million a few years ago, and Nancy Pelosi is worth well over $100 million. And recently there was a story broke that it was discovered that she was doing some of that selling off of stocks because she had foreknowledge of some of those stocks being hit dramatically in a negative way. And she got very irate when a reporter asked her about it. But of course she's going to get irate. You're going to get mad when you get busted. Anyway, back to my introduction. At this point, we should impose unwritten term limits and get rid of leaders who have overseen the collapse and demise of America. Viewed another way, we should no longer settle for leaders who control a system that has wrested control away from those it was tasked to represent. With wealth inequality and poverty, wages collapsing America's standard of living, wars collapsing America's reputation around the world, pharmaceutical companies peddling opioids to the point at which they must also sell drugs to combat this constipation that accompanies opioid addiction, we need to stand in defiance of the status quo. With banks foreclosing on homes that fell into the cracks of an illicit, fraudulent, and failing economic system, should we allow white-collar criminals to walk free after stealing millions of dollars? I don't think so, and my hope is to provide a means to end such injustices in the following pages. According to our leaders, there is little to nothing that we can do to avoid the problems we face. Maybe this is true, or maybe they're lying as they line their pockets. Maybe we should get to the bottom of this mystery. Maybe we should move the country in a completely different direction instead of taking incremental steps that only seem to cause us to sink further into a quagmire of debt, death, and greater tax cuts for the rich. My hope for this book is to share my belief that it is time to wake up the masses and look to the many for ideas, to present suggestions and opinions as to which path would serve our collective best interests, to not only direct, but inform and empower. It is long past the time of complaining about the system. It's time to insist that we as a nation take responsibility for how we are perceived around the world, to be accountable for our actions and the actions of our leaders, and to force those leaders to act in our collective best interests. Maybe a little more transparency is required. Maybe the honesty of Phil Donahue, the Dixie Chicks, Ed Schultz, Bernie Sanders, Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kalinske, and more is needed. Maybe we should look to their past and current examples to realize a possible way out of the spiral we find ourselves going down these days. With that in mind, let's get to the solutions. Thank you. I hope you join me again for another episode of Solutions. Enough complaining. Let's fix America.